everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to continue and actually finish our discussion on the Holocaust. And again, there's loads more information that we could talk about with the Holocaust and personal stories and things than even I could give you here in this short few videos. But this gives you kind of the basic, kind of preliminary information that needs to go in your notes. We'll talk much more about this in class. But for today, make sure you're adding this to there, and let's begin. So we've talked about the Holocaust so far, and if you remember, we've talked about some of the major camps involved and why Hitler is going to go through with what he calls the final solution, why he's going to send people to camps. And so today I want to talk a little bit more about what some of the camps are like, and then what also some of the people that are involved in the camps. One of those people is this guy, a doctor by the name of Joseph Mengele, and he gets the nickname of Angel of Death, and he oversees the camp hospital at Auschwitz. And Mengele would use children mainly, but he would also use adults, but mainly children for some bizarre experiments. He was very fascinated with children, and particularly with twins, and he would do experiments to see how doing something to one twin would maybe, if it would affect the other. He had this belief that twins had this kind of telekinetic power, that they were linked almost. Some of his experiments included amputation of limbs. He would amputate one twin's arm to see if the other twin's arm would die. He would also intentionally infect one twin with a disease and see if the other twin got it. Or he would do blood transfusions between the two twins, and he was convinced, or he was at least trying to see if one affected the other. And so as he does these experiments, of course, many of the twins end up dying, and those who don't die are usually subjected to even worse experiments, or are often intentionally killed, and then they're dissected to see if their physical makeup is any different from what their other twin was, who was experimented upon. Now, the Nazis in total kill about 5 to 6 million Jews. We're not 100% sure. The number fluctuates back and forth, mainly because the Nazis were really great at covering up what they did. For the most part, destroying records and trying to hide the atrocities that they had done. But we do know that about 90% of the Jewish population in Poland was killed, and about 2 out of every 3 Jewish people in Europe were killed at this time. It's not just the Jews, though. If you remember from class, we've talked about it's also the Gypsies were considered just as bad as the Jews, and they were rounded up for mass killings as well. And about 500,000 Gypsies were sent to death camps. And any leading Slavic citizens like judges, intellectuals, lawyers, doctors, they would also be sent to the camps and be targeted, because remember, Hitler is wanting to clear these conquered spaces out and recolonize them. He needs that Lebensraum, right? So you have to get rid of these people, either make them into slaves or completely destroy them and be rid of them, so that your people can move into those regions. Now, here's a chart, and again, the Nazis are really good, detailed-oriented people. They're going to do their best to make sure that they're keeping adequate records, and so they're going to have kind of a color-coded signals even within the camp. So when you would get to the camp, you would get your uniform, your prison uniform, and they would sew these patches on to signify why you were there. So red would be for political enemies, green would be for habitual criminals, blue is for immigrants, purple is for Jehovah's Witnesses, pink is for gay males, because remember the homosexuals are targeted as well, and then so on and so forth. And so you would have one of these, and then anytime one of these people happen to be Jewish, and they also fit in these categories, you would get a yellow triangle behind that would end up making a star. So it was easily you were easily recognized for why you were in the camps themselves. Now, the camps are eventually liberated, and by 1944, the Allies are starting to kind of close in on Germany. We'll talk about the plan, the D-Day invasion, and the Soviets coming from the east, and the other Allies coming from the south, and how they're slowly kind of closing in around Berlin. But as they're doing that, they're coming upon camp after camp after camp. We'll talk a little bit more about that in class, and you'll hear some firsthand accounts of liberating the camps. But the Soviets liberate Auschwitz and many of the Polish and Eastern German camps. The Americans and the British are coming in from the west, and so they're liberating Buchenwald and some of the camps that are in Western Germany. And here's some photos. When they got there, they found a population of people that were left to die, that's left to starve and die, and many of them are skeletal figures. I mean, some of the photos are very hard to take into these camp liberation videos. When the camps are liberated, many times they would go to the nearby town, the Allies would, and the soldiers, and would bring the people into from the town and have them see what was going on within the camps. Many people said they did not know what was going on, but the soldiers didn't really believe them. Thought it was very hard for them to make those claims when you could see this giant camp from the road, you could see the people locked inside, and you could also smell the stench that was coming out of these camps, but also the exhaust from the furnaces, the smell of kind of burning bodies almost constantly at some of these places, made it really inescapable to know exactly what was going on there, or at least have a very good idea. Of course, once they get there, any of the Nazis that are that are still around are immediately targeted by the members of the camp and are shown to the Allies as to who they were, and they were pointed out, as this picture shows. And a lot of Nazis are rounded up. After the war, the Allies can conduct what's known as the Nuremberg trials. And the idea is we're going to get all these leading Nazis together and we're going to try them for war crimes, for the atrocities that they've done. And many Nazis immediately commit suicide. We will talk about some of them, especially Adolf Hitler, who before the Soviets, when they're kind of at his doorstep, kills himself. 22 major Nazis were rounded up, though, and were put on trial in the Nuremberg trials. And this is actually a photo from the Nuremberg trials. Most of them claimed that they were just following orders, that they weren't really guilty, that they were just kind of doing what the Reich had said. That excuse didn't really fly very well. 12 of them out of that 22 were sentenced to death. The others were sentenced to long prison sentences, many of them without ever even getting out of prison. Those who were able to escape, many of them ran away to South America, places like Argentina, Chile, Peru, and even up into the 1990s were still being caught and captured and brought back to Germany to stand trial. I think the oldest living Nazi actually died even just 2 years ago. So these guys were living in hiding for many, many years because of the crimes that they had committed. In total, there was about 6 million Jews, or 78% of the entire European Jewish population that were killed. 7 million non-Jewish Soviet citizens, 2.8 million Soviet prisoners of war, or POWs. Those were soldiers that had been captured during war and then were sent to the camps as well. 1.5 million non-Jewish Poles were sent to the camps or into forced labor camps. 500,000 gypsies. Around 400,000 people were forcibly sterilized. So that means that you were prevented from ever having children. 250,000 people with disabilities were killed. 15,000 homosexuals were sent to camps. And roughly 10,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. So all of this comes together. And while I said, again, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the Holocaust, and we'll do a lot more of that in class. But just understand that this is not an isolated thing that happens in a small region. This is Hitler's master plan. This is the way he's going to, fulfill the master race, the Aryan race ideology that he has, B, create that Lebensraum, that living space for the people, and C, how he's going to try to be able to achieve world domination. That's what his goal is. And these are the means of how he goes about doing it. We will talk much more from here on out as kind of the rise of the dictators. You will talk about Mussolini and Hirohito and Hojo and some of the other leading figures in the war that are more dictators. Then we'll start talking about the war itself. But for now, make sure you have this information in your notes. If you have any questions, please save them, write them down somewhere in your notebook, and bring them to class so we can talk much more about them. And until then, have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.